In today's video, we're going to be going over a simplified overview of what data structures and algorithms are. And specifically, we're going to be going over the motivation behind data structures and algorithms and exactly why we learn them, and as well as going over what they are. So if this is something you struggle with, keep watching. So suppose there's a prompt, and the prompt is that we have several customer names and we have to have a piece of code that's able to store these customer names and also print out these customer names. So we have two of our handy coders, Orange and Blue, who are going to attempt to create a solution for this. So with Orange and Blue, they take two separate approaches. With Orange's approach, he decides that he's going to store the customer names in separate string variables, and then he's going to create a print statement that will print the customer names. However, with Blue's approach, he decides that he's going to store the customer names in a string array, and then he's going to create a for loop that will print out each item of the array, which would ultimately print out each customer name. So now we have two solutions, and the next question we should ask ourselves is, which one should we pick? And this is hard because both solutions get the results that we want. But to kind of help us, the next question we should ask ourselves is, okay, which solution is better? But how would we define better in this case if both solutions do the job? Now, when you first learn coding and you take your introduction classes, the most important thing for you is writing a piece of code that gets results. But as you mature in your coding career, you suddenly learn there's another level of coding where suddenly getting the results isn't enough. And you learn that not only do you have to get the results, but you have to get the results in the most quickest and efficient way possible. So when it comes to evaluating which solution is better, this is the question we have to ask ourselves. Which solution is going to give us the results in the quickest and most efficient way possible? And this is the motivation of why we learn data structures and algorithms. Because data structures and algorithms essentially provide us a blueprint that helps guide us in creating quick and efficient code. But let's take a step back and actually go over what data structures and algorithms are. So when it comes to data structures and algorithms, there's three main important components, which is the data structure, and the algorithms. But that's probably not helping you understand what the heck data structures and algorithms are at all. So let's actually explain what these three things are. Now let's say you had a bunch of textbooks. If you're a college student, this is probably very relatable, where you have tons of textbooks that you're probably not going to use, but that's a different story. Anyways, these textbooks serve as what we call our data. And when it comes to data, that can be anything from information to objects, and in this case, our textbooks serve as our data. Now, of course, we want to be neat and organized individuals, and we want to place our textbooks somewhere. So we're considering about three options. We're thinking about maybe stacking the books and placing them in a corner, or maybe we can store the books in a box, or we can just decide with a bookshelf. Now, these three options are what we call our data structures. And data structures are places where we store and organize our data. Now, when it comes to selecting the data structure for our data, we want to think about the structure that is best fit for our data. For example, if we were to think about selecting the stack, think about if you had a book that's maybe in the middle or even at the bottom of the stack. If you think about it, trying to retrieve that book is probably going to be catastrophic because, it's at the bottom of the stack. It's going to be painful. So you'd probably kind of eliminate the stack as an option. Now, if you think about the box is, a step better. But of course, there's still some space constraints with the box, and the box is a little flimsy and books are heavy. So the box is probably not the best. And if you were to compare the box with a bookshelf, come on, let's be real, the bookshelf just makes sense. So in this case, the data structure that's going to be best fit for our data is going to be the bookshelf. So we choose the bookshelf. So once we select our data structure, we're going to place our data and store it in that structure. Now, of course, we don't want to just leave our data and do nothing with it. We want to actually use our data. And in this case, we want to use our books and get our money's worth. So some ways that we can use our data is simply reading the books, right? Or maybe you want to search for a book to make sure it exists because maybe you realize, hey, I forgot, do I have this book? And maybe you want to double check to see if you have it and see where it is. Some other ways that you can use your data is maybe you want to sort the books in a certain order, maybe by genre or by author last name. Or maybe you might get some more books and you want to add it to your bookshelf collection. Or maybe you want to get rid of some books. Now, all these ways that we are using the books are what we call algorithms. And algorithms are essentially the way we handle our data. And they consist of 5 main operations, which is reading, searching, sorting, inserting, and deleting. So now that we have a general understanding of what data structures and algorithms are, let's now revisit the initial problem of figuring out which solution is better. Now remember, when we say better, we're trying to figure out which solution is going to give us the quickest and most efficient results. So now that we understand data structures and algorithms provides us this general question to ask ourselves whenever we are approaching a solution. And that is, given our data, which data structure would be most appropriate for our data? That way it helps us optimize the algorithms that we perform on our data. So when figuring out which solution is better, the first question that we should ask ourselves is, given the data, which in this case is our customers, is the data structure that Orange and Blue chose appropriate? And in this case, Orange chose to store the customers in string variables, whereas Blue chose to store the customers in a string array. But which one is more appropriate in this situation where it's going to help us optimize the algorithms that we perform? Now in this video, we're not going to be seeing which one is better in this case because that'll be saved for another video in the future. But the purpose of this video was to provide a high-level overview of what exactly data structures and algorithms are, as well as its purpose and the reason why we learn them. Now there's a lot more topics concerning data structures and algorithms, but like I said before, this was just a more simplified introduction of what they are. But that pretty much wraps up this video, guys, and I hope this was helpful, and take care.